due to the disaster declaration issued by Governor Pritzker. Because of this order related to COVID-19 health concerns affecting the state and the city, the mayor has determined that an in-person meeting at City Hall with all participants may not be practical or prudent. Alderpersons and staff may not all be physically present at City Hall due to the disaster, and physical attendance at City Hall may be limited. To participate remotely during the public comment or public hearing portion of the meeting, please join by phone at 1-385-393-5122, PIN number 260-593-462#.
Thank you very much. Roll call.
Alderperson Robinson.
Present.
Hurt.
Here.
Gilbert.
Present.
Swanson.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Poulos.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Mayor Tomes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Public comment. Anybody for public comment? No, Chief, you cannot. No. Nothing up. Nobody signed up. Anybody virtual? Virtual public comment. Hearing none, we will move on. Todd, you're up for capital improvement, or Linda, I'm not sure who's.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll start it off. You're going to hear from myself, Linda, and some of the departments tonight. The purpose of the study session is to talk about the capital improvement plan. As you're aware, the capital improvement plan is just that. It's a plan, a 5-year listing of major public projects and facility improvements that's funded through multiple different sources. I've shown this slide before, but the capital improvement plan fits into kind of a larger framework of planning. The comprehensive plan and the strategic plan play an important part in the development of the capital improvement plan, as well as various other studies related to improvements that are necessary to wastewater and sewer and different plans of that nature. It is a 5-year document. It's a planning tool. It's not a budget, although the first year of the capital improvement plan becomes the capital budget, which is incorporated into the annual budget, and those projects are, specifically approved for funding. The later years, in this case 24 through 27 and even beyond that, are just for planning purposes. Uh-oh. Did I do that?
No, it's over. Blame it on Tim.
Presentation is over.
That was easy.
Yeah, I wrote down some of the goals to the CIP, things that we think about as we put it together. As I indicated, it serves as an important tool for implementing other plans and the council's goals. It helps forecast into the future so you can make plans related to your administrative capacity or your ability to manage projects, as well as your financial capacity. Planning into the future helps look for grants to fill gaps. This plan has a lot of the projects shown as funding, but typically about half of the projects in your CIP won't actually have a funding source. And, as a plan instead of a budget, that helps you think about ways to fill those gaps. A little bit about the document that we presented. It's, I think, different a little bit than what we had put in before. With respect to the project cost estimates, the nearer the project is to the current year, the more accurate the estimates are going to be. Your 2023 estimates are going to be numbers that staff put, a fair amount of work into developing. Then the cost will be adjusted on an annual basis as we move closer to it. Sometimes as projects aren't funded or there's no funding designated, you'll continue to push them out into to future years. A little bit about the document. It includes a copy of the capital budget, which is the 2023 projects that we recommended for funding as part of next year's budget. You're going to hear from some of the departments tonight a little bit about those projects. You'll have a summary report that shows the funding source, as well as the summary of all of the projects when you see the 2 years listed, one is the estimated cost, and then the following column is the projected funding. And then we provided a project sheet for each individual project, shows the estimated cost, proposed funding, provides a little bit of a description of the project, and then just some justification as to why it needs to be done. Are there any questions about the kind of the overview of the capital improvement plan? If not, I'll call Linda up and we'll shift into the finances, and then follow that up by hearing from some of the individual departments about their projects.
All right, good evening, everyone. So we normally start off asking departments to submit their CIP request to us. So based on their request for 2023, here's the breakdown. 29% is miscellaneous, and we'll touch on exactly what's included in there. 16% streets, 13% debt, 33% utilities, which is the water, wastewater, and stormwater, 6% fleet replacement, and 3% public safety. So of that $24.1 million request, and this year is different because these also include ARPA funds in this. Next slide. So of that 24.1 million, 23.7 million is being recommended. Again, 28% would be miscellaneous. That would include like TIF funded projects, various contributions to different agencies, community and economic development projects. We also have 17% streets. Those are funded by motor fuel tax and local gas tax. 13% debt services, of course, that's supported by gaming fund. And debt would include items like the police station, various street project, and some economic development projects. Then we have 33% utilities, followed by 6% fleet and 3% public safety. So the next slide is just a different breakout of the funding sources. As you can see, almost 58% is ARPA funded, followed by 13% user fees, 12.8% gaming, followed by 12.6% contribution and grants. And then the next one is just, again, a different breakout by focus, like I talked about earlier. The bottom three portions of that pie would be mostly utility services at 32 or almost 33%. Okay, and then, moving on to another one. Okay, so that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call Mike up and ask him to talk a little bit about some of the key projects that are requested in 2023, but feel free to ask, any questions about any of the projects that are included.
Yep, thank you. I did not focus on the 24, 25 projects. I was more focused on the 23 projects. Some of the priority projects for 23 are listed on this slide here that I'll start with, which are 31st Avenue resurfacing. That is MFT and state funding. I believe we're receiving about $1.6 million in federal funds, state funds for that project, with the remaining portion coming from the motor fuel tax funds that we receive, and it's approximately about $2.1 or $2.2 million for that project. That resurfacing project will go from 11th Street west to about Illinois 92 Sunset Marina entrance. 37th Avenue and 46th Street reconstruction, that was a project that was supposed to be done this year. We did not receive the environmental reviews back from the historic preservation, DNR, all those. They had a huge influx at the state
when all of the funding came available for the rebuild funds and all these other grants. And so they were overwhelmed with these environmental reviews for each project. We currently have a project that we've been waiting on these environmental reviews now for 2 years, and that's the bridge at north of Blackhawk State Park. I think it's 40th Avenue Court Bridge repair. It's with its proximity next to the Blackhawk State Park, that environmental review is very lengthy. And so it's kind of getting off course here. But 37th Avenue, we did bid that project, and it will be completed in the spring of '23. Another carryover project that we will have, that has been a carryover now for 2 years, at no fault of the city, but that is the 11th Street water main replacement. We are very close to getting that bid. We've been in discussions with the state of Illinois now for quite some time, but we believe we're going to have it out for bids in a vendor to carry over the funding from '22 budget to '23 in December. So that 11th Street water main project is about $1.8 million. Some other highlights that are for Public Works are the fleet replacements with the 3 ambulances that we're looking to replace at about $300,000 apiece. The snow fleet, we're replacing 8 single-axle dump trucks and outfitting those with snow equipment. We should have a few of those in 2023, and the remainder would come in '24. As far as street projects go, 22nd Street and 35th Avenue reconstruction, that will be a total reconstruction. That project is ties into 17th Street, northeast area off of 17th Street. That will also include water main replacement with that project. That project, for the reason for selecting that project is it's poor surface of the streets, and then also the curbs. There's no curbs left to that project, so all the water runs down that hill, is eroding the neighbors' driveways, frontages of their yards, and again, the street is in poor condition as well, and the water main is in need of replacement. We experience a lot of water main breaks in that area. Going over to the wastewater side, we have a handful of projects. A lot of these are basically due to undersized sewer mains. We experience a lot of backups with the wastewater 19th Street area. I receive calls on that project yearly. On that project, I believe it's a 4-inch sanitary sewer main. The standard for a city main is 8 inches, and we have some 4-inch sanitary sewer mains. I mean, a 4-inch main is really your private sewer lateral line that goes to the main. So that's how undersized some of our sewers are in the city of Rock Island. 27th Street, 36th Street, those are all projects that are just in need of increased size and poor condition. Some of those are original sewers, obviously. The stormwater, the 28th Street, that one is primarily, that's right behind Hy-Vee, southwest of Hy-Vee. That street, the storm sewer is undersized again, and during heavy rain events, that entire intersection there floods. You can't drive through it, constant calls all the time, so we're going to install additional storm sewer, run it to the south and tie in. Right now, there is currently no storm sewer. It collects there and then has to surface flow down several blocks away, so we're gonna address that. I kind of touched on the water project at 11th Street. Again, we're replacing the water with the 22nd Street and 35th Avenue Street project. We are looking at some ARPA funds to do backup generators. None of our city facilities for water facilities have backup generators. That includes where we pull in the water from the Mississippi River and where we treat it and send it out to the residents. None of those have backup generators, believe it or not. So we're trying to make that a priority and get those done. Out of all these years, we've never had an issue with needing backup power, but the derecho really put us to that limit, and we did have our interconnect with the city of Moline to feed the top side near the water plant. If we didn't have that interconnect, we would have never been able to provide water to the residents during that time. We went over, I think, about 36 hours with no power to that plant. And it was a scary time. The whole entire city was on a boil order because we weren't sure if we maintained the sufficient pressure for the entire city. So that is a priority in our CIP. We've applied for a grant for that project as well. hoping to receive some funds through the hazard mitigation through FEMA to contribute to that project. Other than that, that's probably some of the more highlights. I mean, obviously, we're looking at the Augustana Slough sewer. We're all aware of that project that needs completed. I've done some presentations, or we've talked about the Mill Street anaerobic digester through ARPA that's in the CIP, the Southwest Treatment Plant influent pump station. That's a 40-some-year-old metal structure, 40 feet below ground, that is outdated. You have to get into an elevator that's like a bullet and ride down in that to get down in that structure. It floods, the metal structure is rusting away, the floors down below are, dirt is coming inside the structure. And if that were to completely fail, all of our pumps that pump our wastewater up and out of that station would be underwater and flood, and we would not be able to accept any wastewater from the whole entire southwest area of Rock Island. So that is a big priority project for us at about $2.7 million. And I could go on and on about those type of projects, but that's just what's here in front of me. So does anyone have any questions for anything that's listed here that I haven't discussed? Or
Would you talk a little bit about the parking garage and what people can anticipate?
yeah, I can talk about that. So we closed it yesterday at 3 o'clock. Put barricades to not allow people to come in and park there. The power has been disconnected, so there's no lights there. It's not safe to park in at this point in time. But while it's not being tore down, we do not want people parking in there. The water will be disconnected Wednesday, I believe, and fencing and heavy equipment will be coming down this week as well. The actual physical demolition of the parking garage, where you start seeing equipment, hammering on it and dust and everything else that comes along with demolition, that will probably not happen until first or second week of December, probably more closer to December 12th. But during that time, from now until then, you'll see some work going on in the interior with removal of electrical things that the contractor can salvage. They'll be removing those items before the actual heavy demolition begins.
Some time ago, you had mentioned about purchasing smaller vehicles to plow alleys. Have we done that?
We have 4 new 1-ton snow plows that have the capability to do that. We are plowing alleys. We did start last year, so we are doing them this year. But we don't have enough to do them simultaneously with when we're doing our residential streets. So after residential streets are completed, we go into the alleys. So we timed it, and a good average is about 3 days from when the snow stopped to when we were done with residential or alleys. Plowing. So yes, we are doing it. It's not as fast as we'd like to see. If we could get more vehicles and more personnel, we could do it much faster. But that is what we have at this time.
Like, how much did we collect in local gas tax this year?
Don't quote me, and I'm looking back at Linda, but I want to say it was certainly less than we anticipated. We were budgeting around 570,000, and I want to say that we were near 400-some thousand,
Close enough.
approximately.
We went to Iowa.
It was significantly less than what we were anticipating.
And in the previous slide, there was the maintenance work that you had listed. Yeah, street maintenance. Is that 400 and some thousand included in that 700?
That is.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then
And we reduced the amount of street maintenance that we would do to fall in line with the revenue that we're expecting for the gas tax. So it is decreased from the previous year
Right.
because of that.
Still more than it was like 3 years ago, so
Oh, no.
I'll take
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah, it's still good.
And then the Brick Street Plan, are we still following the Brick Street Plan where a certain percentage of our revenue is going for Brick Street repair?
We are, I don't know, I'd have to look at the percentage, but yeah, it's about $80,000 a year in Brick Street replacement, and that's done through our patching program.
Right. Okay, thanks. Which street is gonna be done this coming
I
year?
don't have that, but I
Yeah.
can get that for you.
It's okay, I was just curious.
It's probably somewhere,
Right
I believe we may be finishing up
Yeah, I could
20.
use it on 22nd Street.
22nd, I think that is actually, I was just gonna say.
Ah, yes!
The Second Street, 1300 block, north of that area, so in between 9th and 13th, I think is
He's
where
just
we're
saying that because he's
looking
in front of you.
at. No, I mean, but as
Did like-
everyone knows.
You did like a 10 by 10 foot patch on 22nd Street last year with the Brick Street. And there was a
Yeah, and that's about as far as 80,000 goes
Yeah, I
in bricks. No, the money does not go far with bricks.
asphalt. Well, I still just have brick.
There's
Okay,
no
thank you.
more questions for Mike. Maybe we'll have Miles join you, and you guys can kind of talk about the downtown project since it's
Oh,
sort
okay.
of a group effort.
I think, is it on the next slide? Is it mentioned on there in the
I don't know if we have a
miscellaneous?
slide for it or not.
And touch on facade as well, and demolition, I suppose. So, obviously, you may all recall, got a lot of money for some downtown improvements, both a little ARPA, a little of the downtown TIF remaining funds, plus those grant funds that came from the state. So quite a bit of money will be going into the downtown for street reconstruction, streetscaping, all the rest of it. This has been a long, ongoing conversation that CED and Public Works have been having these last few years. And so interestingly, some of the engineering work to kind of do street reconstructions has already been done, and some more is being done now. One of the questions that we're kind of working on trying to sort out is the extent, so the spread throughout the downtown area of improvements we can achieve with the funds that we have, and then how thinly spread the different streetscaping elements can be. So as an example, we might want to prioritize having uniform streetlights throughout the whole of the downtown. Well, they're about 4,000 a pop, and if you start counting how many you'd need, money starts to go fast. So if we want to have those spread out over a certain larger geography, we might have to cut improvements elsewhere, so fewer benches, say. So right now, we're kind of working out kind of how far the spread of things can be, what those elements should all look like and where they should go, and kind of put together a basic streetscaping plan so that that money can be implemented and we can see those improvements. It'll basically be run as a typical Public Works project with a little input from CED, which means that if things don't go perfectly, it's Mike's fault, not mine. But it'll be a good collaboration between departments with some input from that downtown group and other stakeholders that should be nice. Facade improvements there again, kind of working with the economic development team to kind of update the facade program so that it can have a more expansive impact, not just about the aesthetics of a front-facing facade, but also perhaps some important interior improvements for commercial spaces. And then demolition sort of speaks for itself.
Are we able to do like artwork on some of the empty buildings instead of just looking in and seeing those, I mean, the way they look right now, like put some kind of wrap or something on the window so they can't see in, just to give it, spruce it up a little bit, like make it seems like someone's actually doing some work in there?
Sure. So some of that has actually been done in the last couple of years with our kind of downtown place management efforts, and that is a typical function of a downtown place management organization, to kind of touch base with property owners and say, hey, can an artist put up some work in the window so that it doesn't just look like a vacant building while you're trying to sell it. So some of that is going on. I would caution a little bit about spending a ton of money on that, because again, it's not cheap either. It's better to try to work some of those partnerships and achieve that sort of outcome that way. I would also point out, of course, as we move through the budget process here, that we do have our public arts program. And in the past, we've used that for a range of different things, one of them being the rotating sculpture program. So some of that art also is kind of around the downtown. It has been used for murals and similar appliques to building facades in the past, so that could also be a source of funding for that kind of thing, separate from the funds here in the CIP.
Right.
Has there been talk on Second Avenue between, basically the Ped Mall, between 17th and 19th? Is there a decision on that, or you know, I'm sure that would eat
On,
into.
on whether it stays or goes.
Yeah.
One of the things that Mike and I are talking a little bit about is coming to you with a few different options across the whole of that kind of plan for streetscaping. Some of it would be questions about certain elements and where they should go. A few basic things about kind of, are you okay with basically this style of thing or that style of thing? That would be one of those questions, because it's really a policy matter about whether or not that pedestrian plaza remains in place. So it'll ultimately be a question posed to all of you for you to decide on.
When do you anticipate that taking place, Miles?
I think we're at a stage here where the engineering is nearly done. You could probably speak better to that than I can.
Yeah, so as Miles mentioned, we had a plan done, ready to go out for bids several years ago, and then the steering committee came together, and that changed. Our plan was for 18th Street from 1st to 3rd Avenue, and then 18th Street to 19th Street on 3rd Avenue, so going east in front of Pancake House, Circa 21, kind of a big L shape there for a total reconstruction. The plaza wasn't included in that, and so Veenstra and Kim did the design for that project, and what we've asked them to do is come back and get some renderings that we can bring back to the council, and some of these are I would call them live renderings, where you can actually walk through and see what it's going to look like, the sidewalks, the lights, the plantings, and visually agree to, if you like what we're showing you. It's going to be very, very similar to what you see down at the new Modern Woodman lot. The same type of lights, the same, you call it the square sidewalk panels, the picture frame panels. There's the other elements that would had to be decided by the council would be things that were in that grant, as far as the uplighting for the WHBF tower, and whether you want street lighting between street lights and in the center of the road, that those extra elements that we normally as public works personnel wouldn't incorporate into our street projects. We're just looking at the basics, whether this water needs replaced underneath the street or not. So we're going to bring those, what we hope to approve in that general area, because we feel that's the best area to start with, the core, and then we do have a rendering for the plaza. It does include a street going through there. I'm just going to be frank with you, because that's what Public Works would like to see. It's for maintenance reasons and other things too. So we're going to sell it that way.
So, back to, I guess, my question, the information was great, but is there a timeline to when you anticipate this conversation taking place in front of the council? We're looking at December, January?
It'll be in January. We should have the renderings complete, and I want to get together with everyone here before we come to council, but we should have those back to us by the end of next week. And then once we get that all put together, first part of January after the holidays and after the budget's complete, we'll focus on that. So it'll be sometime in January.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I have a question. Mike?
Yes, Judith.
So, I can't recall, did you say lighting is not part of it, or it is part of it?
What part?
Lighting. Yeah, 'cause if lighting is part of it.
Oh, yes, lighting is, any area where we're talking street reconstruction will include all new lighting, all new underground conduit and infrastructure for that lighting. There's really no other way to do it.
Okay, so back in the fall, I drove around downtown at night for quite a while looking at just the lighting. And in my opinion, it's very dark downtown. There are several streets that have decorative lighting, but they don't provide, I feel, like sufficient lighting for security purposes. Then there are other streets that have really good lighting, where, the place is lit up really great. So I want to make sure that gets addressed.
And what's important with the new designs for the lighting, it will be decorative poles, as you mentioned, but the spacing will be significantly less, bringing those poles closer together, more quantity of lights to increase the lighting, whereas the spacing that's there now was further apart, is older concepts for design, and you'll see that improve.
So, well, is there any way to increase, I don't know what you would call it, the wattage or whatever? Because the decorative lights just aren't very bright.
Yeah, that'll be all designed into the project with the electrical engineers, and they'll look at all that photometrics of that.
Okay.
Mike, question for you. Are you looking at all about enhancing lighting in the alleyways? And we're really looking at making the downtown safer, and our alleyways are not exactly well lit.
So if we were going to go, we can do that. If we were going to look at a reconstruction of the alleys, we would, because we need underground conduit and power to those lights. The lights that are there now, well, lack of lights that are there now, they all attach to private buildings. So we would need agreements with that. That is being considered. That we were looking at alleys before, but those were, those are scratched off of the grant application, I believe. We weren't moving forward with those. But
Some of these issues.
yeah, correct. But so as at this time, no, we are not looking in the alleyways for lighting. But if we were to reconstruct those alleys, we would definitely do that. It can be added if needed. We would just need to know what locations. So I know we have some
Alleys
problem
were
areas.
expensive. I mean, I think my alley was $500,000 just for one alley.
To reconstruct it. Yeah, and there's really no savings as far as whether it's an alley or a street. It's all the same costs, all the same materials. It's just the spacing to put sufficient lighting in there. There's really not enough room to put a pole behind the alley because the building face is the right-of-way line or for the alley. So it's very tight in there.
You could put lights on people's buildings.
Correct, and that's where some of the lights are now
Yeah.
that are lighting the alleyways. And again, that can be done. We just need to look at that. It's not being considered with the grant money that we're looking at currently.
Any other questions for Mike or Miles?
Regarding the demoing of buildings and the facade program, can we expect policies that govern both of those programs in the winter/spring? I know last meeting, a week ago, we talked about the facade program, getting policies on the books that govern those, but demoing buildings, policy guiding, what criteria is used to assess whether a building should be demoed,
Yeah.
prioritization, et cetera.
Yeah, an internal memo did get sent out a number of months back that did lay out what the kind of practice of the inspections division regarding selection of buildings for demolition is. So if there was a desire to convert that into a formal council-endorsed policy, that'd be pretty easy to do because that is effectively what we would bring forward. So it'd be effectively what you've seen before in that regard. As for the facade program, kind of along with all of the other kind of ED programming that the ED team is kind of looking at kind of updating now that decisions about ARPA money have been made, we're hoping to bring that sometime soon after the beginning of the new year.
Was the memo about the demoing, was that sent to council?
To my knowledge, it was sent out maybe, oh gosh, maybe almost 6 months ago. So Todd, it would have been about around the time you began here. I can always send it out again. But it lays out basically the building official goes to the code and there's a collection of different critical, basically building component failures. And so when a building is evaluated, it's sort of like how many of those failures are present. And there's a certain point at which you have enough severe kind of failures that the building is really probably not salvageable. And that's how the inspections division then kind of every given year will rank through properties that it's keeping an eye on, seeing how they've changed, either for the better or for the worse. Because sometimes things thankfully are repaired, but when things kind of cross a certain threshold of too many components having gone beyond the point of no return, that's when we move them forward to demo.
Sure.
So there is a process, but to my knowledge, it's never been formally approved by the council, though it more or less follows what building code would dictate.
I'll look in my inbox.
It
I have a
it
habit
was
of
quite a
missing
while
things.
ago now that I'm thinking about it, probably about 6 months ago.
Can you send it to me again, please?
I can certainly send it out to everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. John Grip.
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to say that the Parks Department does have some capital projects next year, so we're excited about that. One of those projects is the second phase of our Douglas Park multi-use sport field lighting. The first phase, just to refresh your memories, was when we got the T-Mobile grant of $50,000, and the Friends of Douglas Park matched it with $50,000 to get the new electrical upgrade that was necessary for those lights. Phase 2 will consist of purchasing of the light poles, the fixtures, and the installation of those. We do have our bids are due back, and we'll be getting a memo to council for approval to use ARPA funds and to make the budget transfer for that, hopefully next month, if not next month, in beginning of January. Next, we have the Highland Springs Clubhouse project that's going on. The new building is scheduled for completion the middle of January. Everything's gone fairly well. The old clubhouse was demolished today, so that was kind of bittersweet to watch that. We had a little bit of a crowd there for that. This project was made possible with our partnership with the First Tee program. They are in over $300,000 into this project. We've privately raised over $100,000 to go towards this project. And we've got grants for this project as well, over $50,000 and climbing each day. Then obviously we have the assistance from ARPA. Next we have the Mel McKay pickleball courts. This project consists of replacing the dilapidated courts that are located in Mel McKay Park. This is also it scored very high in our strategic planning process. All of these projects did. That's kind of what led us to recommending these projects. It's going to consist of new 6 pickleball courts, fencing, lighting, and some parking lot reconfiguration out there. And this project was made possible with the support of the Quad City Pickleball Club, all $5,000 of it, but that pretty much wipes out that club. But we appreciate their support. We also have an OSLAD grant application in. We've been meeting with those folks regularly and are pretty much, I'm going to knock on wood, pretty much a shoe in for that, which would allow us to double the ARPA funds that we're receiving for this, which would make this project possible. So it would turn our $300,000 into $600,000, which is the scope of this project. The OSLAD grant is the Open Space Land Acquisition and Development. It's an Illinois state grant that we're able to apply to each year. We've been successful with that grant a number of times at Douglas Park, Whitewater Junction, and other larger projects that we've done. And finally, we have the RIFAC repairs and upgrades. RIFAC was impacted the most during COVID. We were about $600,000 down in revenue. We weren't allowed to open in smaller capacities as fast as we were for golf and for Whitewater and some of our other programming. So it really hurt. And when you have people signed up for the electronic payment memberships and you shut that off during COVID, they're not running back right away to turn them back on. But our numbers are climbing back up to where we were pre-COVID. So I'm happy with the work that we've done the last year. The work that we're looking at doing there is one of it's required. We're going to have to replace our filtration system for our pool. It's 30 plus years old, and it's a big ticket. It's about $230,000 to replace that, but it's definitely necessary to keep the pool in working order. We've seen other pools in the area that haven't done some of these preventative maintenance things, and we know where that goes, and it's not good. We're going to be doing some locker room updates. Fixtures, steam rooms, lockers. Lockers right now at RIFAC are in need of a facelift, if not replaced. There is a refacing company that's out there that can do it for kind of pennies on the dollar, so we'll explore that option and see how that turns out. We're also going to be doing some family changing rooms. We have folks that come in with young kids. A dad may have a daughter. We may have folks that aren't comfortable in certain locker rooms, so we'll have areas for them to change and be able to comfortably use our facility. And that project is made possible through ARPA. So those are the capital projects we have for 2023. We do have the Hauberg project going on right now as we speak. That's going to be a wonderful project when it's completed. We have ran into a couple of things that are going to increase that a little bit. When you open up a 100 and how many year old facility, you find things. We found a sinkhole the size of a van that we had to address. But the most important thing with the Carriage House project is that's going to allow them to do the number of rentals that's going to make them be self-sustaining. So the goal is to get them off self-sustaining so we don't have to put as many of our resources into it per se. We'll obviously support them and help them any way we can, but financially we're not able to commit what is needed until this gets done. So that's what we have.
Do you have a timetable for Dankman Park?
I do. Dankman, it's currently being reviewed by our engineering department. All these projects too, we're gonna work through our engineering department first, make sure they're made whole financially for their portion of the engineering, of course. And that will go out to bid. It's gonna be the replacement of the basketball courts. It's gonna be a refurbishment of the shelter. It's gonna be a refurbishment of the playground area and ADA access throughout and some updated lighting. I'm hoping to get that done, Alderman Robinson, by the end of the summer next year. All of these depend on contractor timing, material, and other fun things like that. That's what I have.
Okay. Thank you, John.
You bet.
We've got a number of public safety projects included in the plan, so I want to call on the Chief of Police first to talk about some of their plans.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I'm just going to walk through what we have listed for the police department on capital improvement. The two that I'll address first are our Axon Fleet camera system and our body-worn cameras. The Fleet Access system is the newest system that actually integrates into our existing body cam system, which is Axon. So we've had Axon cameras, body cameras since 2017. Prior to that, with the squad cameras, we had the arbitrator systems. We had 3 generations of arbitrators. But the downside with them was they would upload that. At the time, it was cutting edge, but over time, it's since changed. It would upload information and all the data wirelessly once it hit an access point at the police station. Actually, even before we were at the new police station, it would be at the parking ramp. We had access points set up. Unfortunately, with that system, every time the company upgraded the operating system, we had to go to a different one. We had to archive that old video on the server, and we'd have to use different access systems to get to that data. And over time, again, that data builds up. We're having to store it on servers here. IT is responsible for maintaining it. So what's nice about the new fleet system, which went into service this year, was now it's all uploaded to the cloud, just like our body camera video. We don't have the back-end work that has to go into it that we did before, so it's a lot nicer. Everything's in one place. All those videos from body cameras and squad cars, all is stored in one place. The officers goes in, tags it, identifies it. All that evidence is sent electronically, whether it's to the state's attorney's office, the city attorney's office, to the public defender's office, for FOIAs. Everything's done electronically. We've cut down on so much of the physical work that had to be done. Now it's going away. However, with that comes a cost. I will tell you though, when it comes to the body cameras and the video, what doesn't go into this, while this looks like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, I shouldn't say it looks like it, the savings that the city has probably seen in potential lawsuits that we were able to fight, or I guess or dispute, has been very helpful. I think of one right off the top of my head. We had an individual that fell, broke their wrists, was trying to make a claim against the city, and the video actually is what made it very clear that that's not the case. It was his fault. City attorney, I think, could probably address that as a recollection on that. But that's just one of many where there was, and that doesn't even count all the claims that never even were filed, just simply because we had the video, and there's nothing to argue. It's that clear. From everything from our use of force to any claims that the officer has somehow acted inappropriately. And we can also clear any of those complaints out so much faster. So again, I can't say enough how valuable these the cameras are, both in the squad cars and on the officers. Anybody have any questions on those two? The next project is the emergency services radios. That is our portable radios. They're reaching their 10-year lifespan. 2024 will be the last year, and they will no longer be supported. So to replace, and it's not just the police, that includes fire and public works that use these radios. There's a varying amount of price for them, but they're on average around $7,000 to $8,000 a piece. These, when we bought them, were a little over $5,000. So it's just technology, it's expensive, and it's what it's going to take to replace all those radios. So that's where that money is being funded there. So in the end of '24, we're looking to replace all the portables. Any questions on that? License plate recognition. We are looking at the Flock system. We've had them come out, and they've already done some site surveys. We've done pretty much picked out locations where we want to put these. We've got some prices for the next 3 years. And it's a new technology that we've been working with a little bit. We've had licenses through our current camera system, but it was very limited on what we can do. These are more specialized, and again, it's all cloud-based. We're not having to store this information on our servers. And what's nice is also we're networked with every other Flock user out there, which right now is Silvis, East Moline, Milan, Rock Island. Hopefully, we'll see if Moline does it. And then the Iowa side, and of course, anywhere in the state of the United States. Right now, they're very popular, pretty much anywhere in the urban areas, Chicago, anything like that. The highways are a different system, but we're already utilizing the database. They're letting us use it now for free. Once we get our cameras in, we'll be sharing that technology, but it will really make a difference for investigating these incidents with crimes and other activities that we want to abate here in Rock Island. So that's what we're looking at there. As part of that also, we also looked at a gunshot detection system through the same company, which is integrated into it, which is pretty intriguing also. And we have the funding based on what's allowed here that we could probably accomplish getting that system in it also. So,
Chief, has there been any discussion amongst the law enforcement group about group buying? I mean, if all of us municipalities are buying this, why don't we pull together and buy
I think
it
that's
in
a
bulk?
fantastic idea. Axon, we're all using Axon. We're all on different contracts, but Axon is like anything else. It's kind of like, what do you want? What do you want to pay for? And that goes all the way up to storage. We pay a lot for what we pay for, we get a lot of storage, which is very useful to us. We've transitioned over to a new records management and computer-aided dispatch system that we're working the bugs out of still. We are fortunate because we have Axon. We are not dealing with near the problems that the other agencies are because we can use that system. So we can transmit and send information to the state's attorney's office is a perfect example where the other agencies are having a lot of difficulty doing that because of what we have. So we're actually we're kind of ahead of the game there. So that's a good thing. But what I would love to see is all of us, since we're all in the same system, at some point where you get the state's attorney's office, Moline, Rock Island, East Moline, Silvis, all of us get together and get one big contract that covers us all. That would be fantastic. I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon because right now we're on a 5-year cycle and we're in year 3, going into year 3 of our body cameras, and we're in year 2, going into year 2 of fleet. So it would have to be coordinated in such a way that we could work this out for Axon and, again, all get together and hopefully get a better price, and we'd all have to kind of agree on what we want.
So there's no state bid system or state bid options out there for hardware?
State doesn't even have, as far as state, they don't even have body cameras yet.
Thank you.
Even though it was state legislation
That is
requires-
correct. Those are, that's an unfunded mandate that they did not see fit yet to, they will eventually.
Kind of like how
FOIA.
FOIA doesn't apply to the General Assembly, right?
Correct.
Correct.
So,
Well, Mayor, is there any discussion about this within Bi-State? I mean, Bi-State is our other entity that does group buying for salt and stuff like that. Is this a discussion going on there?
That's something we'll certainly pursue. The mayor was just chatting, we were just whispering to each other by state.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll certainly pursue that, and there's some benefit of being on the same systems like the cameras. You know, you can share access to cameras and gunshot spotters and things like that.
yes, again, that's all being part of the same system, it all shared. And again, what I hope to pursue with the Flock system we get in place is also getting some of our apartment complexes as part of their security plan. They can purchase this also. And once they install those, and we have access to that information, so the city's not having to pay for that. This may be something where, again, I can think of a couple complexes that we're working with now as part of their security, saying this would be something that would be good to add. And again, that just gives us more information and capabilities.
Have we reached out to the school districts to see if we can partner with them with some of their buildings because they're in
The
a
school
lot of those
district,
locations?
I have talked to the school district, Mr. Butler. We've talked about that. One of the big things I've encouraged them, and we went through similar things here, I think Tim can talk about it, but getting everybody onto one system is the key. So for us, you know, even here at the city, it's taken time because everybody kind of had bought their own systems. Everybody would do their own thing. Well, now we're all gradually moving to the one system. The school district's in the same boat. They're just now getting to where they're unifying all their access to their schools. We're down to now 2 separate access cards or proxy cards now. So it's 2 systems, but at least we're down to 2 compared to keys and access cards, and each one has their own. So we're gradually getting unified. Once it gets down to that point where they get to one system, then we can start talking about integrating a little bit more.
Random question about the license plate reader. Does that allow us to have real-time traffic count information, you know, for economic development purposes and public works purposes?
I am venturing out into a question I'm not positive about. I would guess it may be a possibility where you could say how many vehicles have traveled through this area, but I would feel better answering that question after they specifically ask. Is that a yes? Okay, that's a yes. I don't remember if I specifically asked that question. That wasn't one of my focus points, but Tim.
IT question, IT answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're already paying for the technology, and it can
Exactly.
be used for both police and public works or CED work.
And right now, the initial plan is to have the city, basically a ring of LPR cameras in the city. We'll be able to track every car in and out of the city. And of course, now the next phase would be if we do the gunshot detection, there's another, we pretty much know the areas that we're having the main problems, what we're gonna deal with. And those will be the areas where you'll set up the listening systems that go with that, and then there'll be strategically cameras around that also. So if one triggers, triangulates the location, then it tells you which of the cameras will actually bring up potential vehicles that may be involved. It's pretty nice, but it's new technology, but it's cheaper than the shot spotter system, which is very expensive, but we'll see how it goes. And Peoria, we were at Peoria recently. Peoria has shot spotter. They've had it for years. They're actually going and doing a pilot program with Flock also. And then the next one, the last one I'll touch on is our virtual training system request. I went back because we have a virtual training system, and I went back because I remember because I wrote the grant request for it. And I have a memo here that was done on February 24th, 2011, when we got a grant of $150,000. This was approved in the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriation Bill for fiscal year 2010, which fortunately for us, Senator Dick Durbin is who got that funding for us. So we ended up purchasing our Megit FATS system, which is a firearms training simulation system, and we also bought our first automated fingerprint identification system as part of this grant money. But again, this was back in 2011, and that system has now reached the end of its lifespan. So we're looking to replace that system with a different system. We actually demoed out a virtual reality system with glasses on. I don't know if we had that on our Facebook page, and I think some people came down and tried it out.
Judith, I think, was there.
Yeah, so we're looking at things like that. We'd like to upgrade. It's very useful technology, not only for training our officers, but it's also useful. We use it for our Police Citizens Academy. Whenever people come in, training. I believe Blackhawk College does their law enforcement program. They'll bring their trainees over and they'll use the system also, trying to get them exposure into things like that. So, and it's not just firearms. It's all levels of use of force. It's really no longer what they call a firearm system. It's basically a use of force decision-making system. So it goes all the way from just verbal commands all the way up to firearms to mace, tasers, whatever may be appropriate. And de-escalation is also one of the big parts of it.
Great.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Chief. Chief Yerke, would you talk about a couple of the fire projects?
Good evening, everyone. We've got 3 projects. 2 are in the presentation here, but there's also a third one. So the first one is the replacement of 4 of our outdoor weather warning sirens. 2 of them have already been replaced, but we've got the other 4 that need replaced. They're more than 25 years old. And so actually those bids came back for that project, and that's on the agenda for approval tonight. The other project we were looking at is purchase of new battery-powered extrication equipment. We currently have some hydraulic extrication equipment on the rescue squad and a smaller set on Engine 32, but what we'd like to do is convert all over to all battery-powered extrication equipment, and we would actually have tools on our suppression apparatus too, so that they could handle some of their smaller stuff without having to have the rescue squad respond to every call. And actually, we've got bids back on that from 5 vendors. Our team's going through the review of the bid packets, and I hope to have something to you for approval at the December 19th council meeting. And then the last project, at the bottom there, you can see the station alerting system. This is an internet-based fire station alerting system that's more compliant with our new P25 digital radio system. So basically, what this does is it's a computerized alerting system, so it allows the dispatchers to stay on the phone with the caller while the computer gets us out the door. It reduces response time and reflex time. Every other municipality around us has this system already in place, and what's nice about this is if, based on our box cards, if there's a working fire, say in the east side of Rock Island, everybody on that box card, us, Arsenal, and Moline, would all get dispatched at the same time through the computer. And so my goal is to have that RFP written up and completed before I retire, and that will go out for bid in 2023. So.
You heard him, he's not gonna retire until that project's done.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing.
I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have that done so my successor can just publish it, put it out for bid, and go from there. Like I said, that system's in place in all the other municipalities around us, and it works really well. And then we do have some other projects that we submitted for down the future in the CIP.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for? Very good. Tim, you want to talk a little bit about the IT projects?
Good evening. So you heard the police chief talk about all the technology that they're putting in the police department. A lot of that winds up on the internet somehow. And one of the things that we need to kind of improve upon is our ability to get things in and out of the internet. And so one of the things that was on the list was the fiber optic infrastructure. That's basically just some cabling to get us from point A to point B. But at the same time, there are electronics that ties all that cabling together that then ties us to the internet. So it's all one big system, if you will, and it becomes necessary to just move all that information up and down the superhighway. Another important project for us, I think, of course, you've all heard about this, the city software. And recently we've begun the process. Well, earlier this year, a small committee was put together to take a look at the city software. This summer, we released an RFP asking for consulting assistance, and then the council recently approved us moving forward with a consultant. I think probably next month we'll at least get started with consulting services, and probably after the first of the year, hopefully we'll be working on putting together an RFP to be released hopefully this spring, perhaps early summer, to go out to bid for replacing the financial software for the city of Rock Island. And that project's going to take a couple of years to get into place. And so that's a big project because the financial stuff impacts everyone. It's a budgeting process, general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable. It could include things like payroll, time cards. We've also looked at, it possibly might have something to do with utilities. So possible utility billing is part of that project. And last but certainly not least, we've talked about land management as part of that. So permits, licensing, those type of things. All of that, we're trying to keep a focus on how do we improve it from the citizen's perspective. We want to make it easier for the citizen to do business with the city of Rock Island, that's what it comes down to. And to give them the power of information in their hand as well. Those are the two biggies. We do have a line item on for video storage, but I think the chief kind of hit that one.
Okay, thank you. Angela, you want to give an update on the library project?
have our meeting tomorrow. We have one every Tuesday, so I don't have the latest information, but as far as I know, the part that we've been waiting for has come in, and it should be getting climate controlled now, so they can install the flooring, and once the flooring's installed, we can put the rest of the furnishings and do the rest of the work, and hopefully have a soft opening by the end of the year. So, do you have any questions? It's going to be exciting.
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. All right, some things you won't see in the CIP. Linda, you want to talk a little bit about this slide?
Yes, so these are the contributions and projects that have been supported by gaming money in the past, but the last couple of years we've used general fund carryover for these projects. So these would include, and I'll just kind of list them in case anybody's watching or listening, the Quad City Convention and Visitors Bureau, Bi-State Regional Commission, Community Caring Conference, Development Association of Rock Island, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Quad City Arts, Quad City Chamber, River Action, Rock Island Arsenal Lobbying, Neighborhood Organizations Gardens, Residential Program Rebates, Red, White, and Boom, Labor Day Parade, and then we do a railroad crossing lease also from these projects. So that's pretty much what's included in that.
Linda,
Yes, ma'am.
is it possible to get a detailed list of these projects, general fund projects with the amount?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
So do I understand it correctly that these items are not in the CIP anymore?
Right, yeah, we just wanted to highlight it, just to, indicate we hadn't just cut them out totally. We transitioned them over to the operating budget. CIP would typically include items that are capitalized, valued of $5,000 or more. You might see some that don't fit neatly into that category, like city software or something like that. But that's really the focus of the capital improvement program. We've referred to debt service a number of times too, and that's typically not included. It actually listed out in the plan either, and that's true of TIF. There was a slide that talked about TIF projects as well. Miles, you want to make any comment on TIF associated projects that were previously in the CIP? And
Yeah, so CED has had a number of things included in the CIP, where if you look at a lot of other communities, you'd see similar items, but not in the CIP, right? Because they're not capital projects. So a lot of the TIF items that you'll see in there are just development agreements funded through TIF money that needed to be accounted for somewhere, and so were put into the CIP because it was a convenient place to track them. That previous slide, many of those are our service contracts, or we are a member of those organizations, so CED usually holds those contracts and keeps an eye on them. And they've been tracked through the CIP, even though there's not like a project, right? So we are a member of Bi-State. In exchange for some services, we have this member fee, but there's not a project exactly, right? So what the city manager is talking about is kind of transitioning some of these things. So we're still tracking them like we always have been, but we're not going to track them here in the CIP. They're not projects, they're just payments on various things, whether they're agreements or they're membership fees for different organizations.
And we're working on, expanding our 5-year kind of forecast or fund model for each of the funds. And that's kind of how they're tracked now, rather than including them in the CIP. They're in the fund model, which projects out 5 years, revenues and expenditures. You can track projects and, things that you have to pay in the future.
And this will also be helpful, especially when it comes to tracking some of the TIF funds, because if, every year you're trying to figure out exactly how much is in any one of the TIF districts, what money you have available, what money is already committed to a previous agreement or whatever. These kind of newer systems outside of the CIP will make that tracking a lot easier for staff. So we'll be able to keep a little closer feel on what's going on in those TIFs. So that's an advantage of this as well.
you can look forward as you look out over those 5 years at what needs to be funded and kind of just plug things in for planning purposes and track your fund balance and what you're spending and bringing in for revenue.
I think one of the big concerns I have is just the consistent theme I'm hearing when I'm listening to some of these projects, end of life, 20, 30 years in service, things like that. What are we doing to prevent that, where we're not waiting until the stuff just falls apart? Or like our Public Works Director said, that it's encaving on itself. How are we preventing ourselves from getting to these situations? Because it's gonna hurt us in the long run.
Yeah, there's a number of things that we do and will work to improve upon. Your rate models for your water and sewer, you know, it's essential, and I haven't spent a lot of time with them, but that they include regular maintenance, repair, and replacement, so you're setting aside money through your rates for your utilities. And then we need to, you know, enhance our building maintenance and our fleet replacement programs. It creates sinking funds, so we anticipate we need to replace something in 20 years. We'll start saving for it now. You know, it's easy to put those plans together. It's harder to fund them, but that's a conversation we'll have to have, and we need to enhance those plans and.
But this is almost like we're coming down to most of the projects that are on here, we have to fund because they're at the end of the life where they're going to be out of service if we don't fund it. So it kind of forces us to make a decision instead of actually planning and then being able to make a more of a conscious budgetary decision earlier in the process. Because like right now, half the things on here, they have to be done because it's going to fall apart if not.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we're guilty of it here, but I've seen in other places where, you know, but for a little maintenance, you have much more costly repairs later. You know, roads are a good example. If you don't crack seal and pothole patch and repair sections, you know, you're ultimately going to have to reconstruct it, which is much more expensive. So if we can identify ways through smaller maintenance expenditures to prolong the life, we'll certainly try to do that as well.
I have a,
Go ahead, Judith.
I have a TIF question for Miles. Miles, do you have a list of annual TIF disbursements that are based off of redevelopment agreements? Or is there only like doomers?
So for all of the different TIF districts, we do have tables showing that. Yes.
Can you send that out, please?
We certainly can. I do want to emphasize again, the city manager is kind of providing some guidance both to CED and finance on improving the tracking for that. So it's something that may end up changing in the near future as we continue forward with that. But we can certainly share that information.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So on the subject of what Alderman Robinson was just saying, a lot of the CIP items, well, maybe, I'm not a budget professional, would things like budgeting for tuck pointing in some of our brick buildings, right? I mean, the city of Rock Island owns a lot of buildings, and we have a number of major projects in the CIP, but would things like just budgeting to do basic maintenance on, if there's a hole in the roof that needs to be patched, if there's tuck pointing, I mean, does that go into the CIP, or was that be more applicable to the other budget?
It could. We probably wouldn't list those. We'd probably show them in the CIP in aggregate, you know, like building maintenance, X number of dollars, and have a list that detailed it further. You know, that wasn't necessarily included in the CIP, but we could use as a reference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so do I understand that that's not included in the budget, either in this budget or the other budget? Just sort of an aggregate, like, well, we need to put aside this much money to maintain the Mill Street Public Works facility.
Yeah, so in the building budget under Public Works, for the city facilities that we maintain, meaning City Hall, police station, and other Public Works facilities, we budget a certain amount, and it's wide ranging, right? It could be $20,000 for plumbing, $50,000 for roof repairs. It's not specific. Sometimes it is, depending if we're aware of it. But we do have those dollars, you know, like fire, security, those type of things are all budgeted under the building budget. So we do have a lump sum for building maintenance, but it's not in the capital improvement plan.
Okay, but it's in the other budget,
It's in a
the
different
general
budget.
budget or whatever
And again,
it's called.
sometimes it's specific for certain projects if we're aware of them or if we have that planned. Other times it's just in there for emergency repairs or something that may come up that needs done.
How do you come up with that number? I mean, broad strokes. There's a lot of buildings you
It's
gotta
a prior year's history, and then we take an average.
Okay.
Is there enough in that budget to do those?
No, certainly not.
You knew that answer.
I just had to say it, but I mean,
it's
in my
kinda
head, I'm
like
like, no, it's.
It's like like the fleet, like the city manager said, you know, those things have been pushed, and we're driving around 22-year-old trucks that should have been replaced 8 years ago. You know, it's just the money wasn't there, and like you said, to put that money aside and to prepare for that is hard too when you don't have enough money to start with. So, but it's a good plan.
Always good plans.
It's a good idea.
You know, it's important, we've talked a little bit about doing some sort of more detailed inspection plan of our buildings so we can identify potential problems with duct pointing or roof leaks, you know, earlier as well.
I mean, we're basically talking about asset management, right?
Yeah.
We don't really, at least, I don't know, doesn't appear that we do that much.
You let it go until it breaks, then fix it.
In my own home, that works really well. It's totally not how I do it.
Yeah.
Hey, I guess I get more concerned about more telecommunications, you know, the IT, because when that stuff breaks, it's like Tim was saying, it's gonna take a long time to try to patch that type of stuff. And then you're patch milling and we're setting ourselves up. I know it's not us, but I mean, it's just what we've been handed. At some point, we have to just say, this is how we need to go moving forward.
Tough decisions when there's X amount of money to work with.
It is. I mean, it's just like most businesses, the first thing they cut out is advertising, and then they wonder why people don't understand.
Right.
But it's an unseen need that has to be done. Rewiring your house. Most people don't see the benefit of that on the outside, but when you want to plug something in, you want it to work. So same thing, police, they need the radios. Now we need to make sure we have the communication so they can pick up the video. It's convenient right now with cloud-based, but sometimes putting all your eggs in one basket, you know, it hurts you. I'm just speaking from experience from my job, so.
I'm reminded of how you opened this conversation, Todd, where you said with the CIP budget, you start out with like, here's all the projects that you want to get done, understanding that they're not going to be all funded, but it's an understanding of what do we actually need, or what are we actually going for, and what's the gap, and where then can we go try to find funding to fill the gap, right, or to get grants or whatever. And it just occurs to me that from what I hear from being on city council, we don't hear what is the actual need for like building maintenance for the city of Rock Island. The conversation's already been had up to the point of, well, we don't have money in the budget, or this is the way it's always done, or we've gone off of last year's budget, which is, we all know for decades has been too small. And so having a realistic understanding of what actually do we need to maintain the buildings that we own, just knowing that would be helpful. And yeah, then we can come to the decision of, well, we don't have that much, what do we do? But knowing how much we need is a good place to start and go from there.
Yeah, and that's really one of the goals of the CIP is to identify your needs, whether you can fund them or not, as opposed to your budget where you're really just submitting a document that's funded.
Right.
So it's a good tool for just doing what you talked about.
I just have one other question. So I don't know if this is for the chief or for Tim. Do we have a backup plan in place? Like, do we back up our videos? I know it's cloud-based, but are they archiving our information off-site, 30-day, 60-day plan, revolving tapes?
They're back there doing this.
The cloud-based, anything for Axon is, again, that's totally up to them. I will tell you, it's a major, major company, and of course, they're backed up, I believe based out of Arizona, and who knows where their backup is located. They've got huge servers that's all they do. So, yes, if the internet goes down, would we be without it? Yes. But I feel better knowing it's there, because it's their responsibility and they're the professionals. And again, I will let Tim talk about our local servers. I know that there's always been 2 sets. I think one's backed up. At least that's how I understood, but I'll let Tim answer that question.
So Chief, real quick, you stated that the company backs up. So is that in contract with us that our data is backed up off-site in case of this building is gone? 'Cause it's cloud-based, but it's not cloud-based. It's still.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. It's my understanding, so I'm
Right.
no expert, but from what I've seen is it's just basically huge lines of racks of servers and they're set at a location. All that data is fed there and it's stored on their servers. And you got to understand, Axon's a huge, major
Right.
company. I mean, this is the United States. It's actually probably international. So they're responsible for maintaining all of that data, and they've been around for, gosh, forever now. I mean, they're the major company. There's very few that can. There's small companies that compete with them, but they're no one like them. They're like the Google for law enforcement.
Google's down, though.
It really does depend on what it is we're talking about with regards to backup, right? In a lot of cases, the video that we're taking, like the intersection videos, those are usually only retained for about 30 days. If there's something we find they need within that 30 days, then we can archive it off and save it up to the Axon cloud. But otherwise, it just gets written over.
Well, for you, it'd be a little bit different. I'm talking about more of our financial systems, our HR systems, the systems that we
Okay.
control.
So that's
Do we
different.
have a policy in
We
place?
do.
Okay.
We do. And for sure, that gets backed up locally, and it gets backed up to the cloud also.
Okay.
And so we've got several options with regards to how backup flows.
No worries. No worries.
Okay, last slide. The timeline's pretty simple, really. We presented the recommendation to you tonight. The capital budget items will be included in the annual operating budget for approval. And then we'll also bring back the plan for approval as a resolution. Again, it doesn't approve the funding, but it just gets the endorsement of the council. Any other comments from the staff or questions from the council?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well thought out. All right. Need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Alderperson Robinson.
Aye.
Hertz.
Yes.
Gilbert.
Aye.
Swanson. Aye. Parker.
Aye.
Pulis.
Aye.
And Healy.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.